fan or a volleyball fan. Heck, you're even a softball or baseball fan. Well, that sport's cut. Yep, this is the Big 12 Squad.
You're talking ball with the Big 12 Squad, sponsored by Game Time. From Oklahoma State to Utah, from Kansas State to BYU, from Houston to Texas Tech, it's the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network bringing you scoops, breakdowns, and the most comprehensive preview of the upcoming Big 12 weekend. Buckle up, it's the Big 12 Squad, and we have a seat for you. No hurt feelings and thin skin allowed. Squad up, you're part of the Big 12 Squad.
Happy Thursday night, everybody. Welcome to the Big 12 Squad. I'm Drake Toll from America's #1 Big 12 podcast, Locked On Big 12. Jake Hatch of Locked On BYU Cougars. Cody Silvall covers Oklahoma State. Derek Johnson of Jayhawks. Christian Rao of Locked On Kansas State. Richie Bradshaw with the Sun Devils. Parker Ainsworth talking all things Houston Cougars. And Nick Maravets of Locked On Cyclones. He chats Iowa State. We will start, gent, on our... Hey,
is this
Nick,
camera not working?
Nick. His microphone's up. We can't hear you, Nick. This is the Big 12 Squad, sponsored by Game Time. We do it weekly every Thursday night. It's when you get to hear all of the Big 12 news from your favorite hosts. Gents, this week I want to talk a little bit more about this house settlement. It is a topic that I've covered for 10 episodes now, and I know a lot of you have as well. And I still have different aspects of it that I haven't covered. Still new things each day to bring up. The one that I want to get to, and I got to it on Monday, but opened up to the group. Why should your favorite university have swimming or men's golf or tennis or soccer or softball or baseball? Why should your favorite school have any sport not named football or basketball from a revenue standpoint in the modern era now that the house settlement has gone through? Cameron Stewart, welcome to the fold.
Thank you. I think that's a great question. I appreciate it. I'll tell you that much.
And his question was,
I think it's important that we live in a society where we can ask questions.
Exactly. This is America, baby. Richie said it. Richie's always been my eyes and ears on this thing.
A lot of good points to both sides. Yeah,
sure. Yeah.
As it pertains to your particular question, Drake, I think the biggest answer is because a lot of these sports, these Olympic level sports, are growing from a popularity standpoint. College wrestling is more popular now than it's literally ever been. It's not even close. Look at the numbers from college softball. They're going up substantially. The national championship, Oklahoma State in golf, from a viewership perspective, is a lot bigger than it's ever been before. So I think if you exclude some of these Olympic level sports, you're cutting out a lot of potential marketability for your university.
I'll do you one more, too.
Maybe you have Ricky Fowler and Victor Hovland and Alex Noren out here killing it on the golf course. It's important to know that they're Cowboys. You can't get rid of that.
True.
I was going to say, I don't think it's just that either. I think the alumni experience would include going to things like softball and baseball games, and you want your alumni to enjoy the school so they donate money later. Whatever they donate it to, I think you're providing an experience for your non-athletic students as well to come watch all these things, cheer on their teams, and then when they make a bunch of money doing something that's not talking to cameras about sports, they can donate that money back, right? I think that's part of it.
Well,
yes, Hatch, hit me.
I was just going to say, Chris Level's supposed to join us in a minute. They have made softball national level news with their investment into Texas Tech softball. Like, that doesn't happen on a normal basis. So, yeah, to what Parker's point, you want to have some of these sports around. If people want to invest in them, makes them far more viable, and that is a positive. Cody talks about men's golf. I know that BYU is a very proud golf tradition, maybe not to the level of Oklahoma State, but I don't see them cutting that sport anytime soon because BYU wants it to be a factor, and they've got a number of high-level prospects in their backyard they brought into that program. So to the point of, you have to have some pride in more of what the jersey is, speaking of, for my case, BYU, versus maybe what the actual sport is, if that makes sense.
Thank you guys for stepping up for me and answering that question.
So
thank you.
I only show up for Cam.
Here's the problem for me, and I mentioned it last week. My sister has a full scholarship to play softball at Baylor, so I like the Olympic sports. Some of the closest coaches I got to during my time in college were the smaller sports guys because they love journalists, they love coverage, they want to be your friend, they want to be very talkative and open with their programs. So I come to this as a guy who doesn't want any of it to die. But the roadblock for me with this question, we talk about Abby Wambach, who could be a massive pillar for a university once they graduate and give money back. And we could talk about a Jenny Finch. We could talk about, on the men's side, the Ben Shelton kid, whose dad was the head coach, men's coach at Florida. Now he's a multimillionaire tennis player at the pro level. And there are those guys, no doubt. But if that's 1 in a million, if that's 1 in 100 million, and I am losing, let's say, for example, on baseball, $4 million a year, Chris Level, you're exactly right. He's going to jump in the conference. If I'm losing $4 million a year by having a college baseball team between staff contracts, travel, the lights being on, and the baseballs themselves, like $4 a piece, what is the point of losing that $4 million and spending the $10 million when I can move that over to wide receiver 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 of the football program? What is the point in a sport costing you an arm and a leg?
National and international exposure. Olympic level sports get more international exposure than college football. We love college football. It drives the bus.
Do we need international exposure? Do I need to be big in Greece?
I think you do. Again, we're in a profitability, marketability era. So the more you can put your logo internationally, the better it's going to be for your university when it comes to attendance and financial compensation. I think it's illogical to get rid of the sports that are the biggest. People in Europe don't give 13 craps about a college football game. Yeah, but they care about USA softball. They care about Olympic level baseball. They care about the PGA Tour. To me, it makes sense.
Yeah,
to me, it's a bit of a hedge. Like it's a hedge to the idea of what if your but what if your football team isn't very good?
Correct.
You know, because one of the biggest things with having your football team or your basketball team or whatever on TV is it's going to increase admissions. Admissions is where you also make money because there's the admission fee and then students enroll, they're paying money, right? Well, if you're not very good at football, then you have other ways to try to bring people in or maybe gather interest in some way. That would be one reason that I could think of in addition to, just trying to gain notoriety as a school.
Well, and the other thing about it, if you don't want to cut sports, you can reallocate. I can speak on the BYU side of things. On the track and field side, we saw Washington State just whack their entire field portion of their track and field program. BYU has got traditionally strong middle and long distance runners. For more than half of their 45 allotted slots in terms of their roster will going forward be allotted to middle distance and distance running, whereas the other ones, sprints, fields, throws, that type of stuff, BYU will allocate those based on need, but they're going to kind of lean into what their strengths are. They're not just going to field an all-around team just to have it, if that makes sense.
Y'all just won a national title in cross country.
Yeah.
If you're one of the top distance runners in America, you're looking at somewhere like a BYU. And again, that's an international level thing. Oklahoma State just had a dude win a national title in track. And we had another guy go win a title internationally.
But we hear from those people once every 4 years.
It's big. I think it's more eyeballs than college football.
And you think about cross country wins a national championship. That's huge. But if a sport like, let's say, tennis is winning a national championship, it's not on ESPN. It's not on
ESPN Plus. Don't you besmirch?
I don't think it is.
Besmirch ESPN Plus.
I think it's like the NBC Tennis Network.
No, but I will say to your point, though, Drake, when Houston had a pair of people medal in the Olympics in 2024, they didn't medal for the United States, but they were Houston Cougars, right? Like that. Sure. They were track and field stars. They were sprinters for England and South Africa, but they did medal and they did flash the Houston Cougar paw, and it was really like a very viral moment for the school for like 3 weeks.
But is that enough? Your viral moment for 3 weeks for the school, is that enough to replace the multiple millions of dollars you could have saved by cutting track and field and giving it to the football field? Chris, you say no.
It's enough.
Chris Level. It's you, yeah.
Are you guys talking about like cutting these teams and
correct,
like all together?
Why today does it matter enough to say we'll lose $10 million to keep track and field per se?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you're going to see some of these schools cut like track and field. I think I could argue tennis. I would disagree with Cody in that I don't think it really gives you any sort of worldwide street cred at all. This is about money, man, and I don't see the pathway to the revenue there. That it makes a lot of sense. I hope that this doesn't happen.
Sure.
But I think we've seen some of these schools around the country start to trim. I mean, Texas Tech just won the Big 12 track and field championship, and they have trimmed their roster. They have cut their budget a little bit. This is the reality of it. But I would hesitate to just chop it all. But I don't know if anybody's going to really do that at the Big 12 level. Are you guys suggesting otherwise?
Chris, let's keep this conversation going. We got to slip it in here. We'll keep the conversation going right after this. Today's show is brought to you by Monarch Money. Why is it brought to you by Monarch Money? Because that's exactly where I go as the 24-year-old of this group to learn where my money went. Monarch Money is my personal CFO. It helps track everything and keep me up to date. A complete financial command center. You stop just managing your money. You start building your wealth. And when I started using Monarch Money, I realized how much I was spending on hats. I have a lot of different hats, and I wear them all the time, but I have too many of them, and I don't wear most of them. So I stopped spending money on hats, and it's all-in-one convenience to help me, instead of juggling multiple apps, have one app to tell me to stop spending so much on hats. Managing money with your partner is also smoother than ever. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year at Monarch Money. So leaving it off with whether or not you cut sports and level, you alluded to Texas Tech cutting roster spots, whether it's in track and field or different Big 12 schools and other sports. UTF, I think UTEP.
I mean, technically, yeah.
Kind of got there. They're also cutting some sports, and I think it's trickling. It's going to trickle up eventually because Baylor fired 9 assistant coaches across different sports, and today it was firing coaches. In my brain, in 2 years, it's firing entire programs because with inflation, the number you give your student athletes is only going to go. Like the women's tennis coach that got fired from Baylor, her salary is now going to Michael Trigg, the wide receiver. You know, not one-to-one, but that's in essence what we're doing here.
So, Chris, my question for you is, we just saw Texas Tech, I already mentioned it, made national news with the investment they've made in softball. I mean, obviously, well-deserved in terms of the news that they made. But for you, from your perspective, watching Tech invest those millions into that, is that a passion project, or is that going to eventually lead to it being a revenue sport?
Not a revenue sport. It very much is you've got a donor that his wife played softball here. And they are like very interested. I don't know where this goes a couple of 3 years from now, but they are passionate about it now. They're trying to set things up for this program. But again, how much does it move the needle? And I think that one, surprisingly to me, it moved the needle quite a bit nationally. Does that increase enrollment? Does that generate revenue? I don't necessarily know if it does. I think that a lot of the marketing and PR for your school it did create by playing in the World Series and making it to the final game and all those things. But I don't know if this is in any way, if you could say, you know what, we're going to take our money away from football or men's basketball and try to go in on baseball or softball or whatever. And we're going to, like I've heard some people suggest nationally, hey man, don't even worry about football. Just try to pick a sport and be really good at it. You can do it. I don't buy it.
Well, we're still in the very early days of women's basketball not being a passion project.
Yeah.
Like we're still pretty early on in that. It took a long time. I know that was always the thing when Kim Mulkey was
the
here.
Argument
like
to
that's
me,
not making revenue.
That's the argument to me to invest in the things though, Cam. And I was waiting my turn a little bit, but like it just took Caitlin Clark. Like who's to say there's not enough? Who's to say Drake's sister's not that for Baylor softball?
The second Caitlin Clark left, you plummeted in a viewership from a viewership.
They're still 3 and 4 and 5 times what they were before she got there.
Agreed. But when will we get our next Caitlin Clark? In 20 years?
In 5 years. Also Kennedy,
like
the softball player is the face of the sport. And I don't know where it is once she graduates after next season. I don't know where this goes, but I mean, she's clearly one of the players of the year in the entire sport. And it's been fascinating for me to watch it up close because I was not expecting this, but I don't know where the longevity of it, I guess, is my point. Because women's basketball here doesn't have the same investment anywhere close. They're not going to be very good at all. And I don't know how you weigh it out.
And the cost of a national championship women's basketball team is way up here as compared to softball. It's down here. And so
it depends on
they have spent millions.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So Drake, when we were coming out of the pandemic, this predates all of this, but Tom Homo, the former BYU athletic director, was asked when they were coming out of the pandemic if BYU gave any consideration of potentially cutting sports at that point. Because remember, when they met almost that entire year of 2020 revenue wise, there were a lot of questions across the nation of what non-revenue sports meant in the college atmosphere. And I vividly remember asking Tom Homo, did you ever consider that? He said, we never really considered cutting sports, but if we were to go back in time, we would have a completely different looking athletic department. Speaking of the actual sports BYU would have on the field, I feel like BYU, from their perspective, they've kind of made their bed with who they have, the sports that they are sponsoring.
Yeah, Jake, how many do you have? How many varsity sports technically are on campus at BYU? Because I'd be willing to bet you guys have more than most of the other Big 12 schools.
I want to say 21, which is higher than most. And
yes,
but Homo's point was, if they were to go back, I can think of 3 or 4 that wouldn't exist, and they probably would invest maybe in 1 or 2 others. Speaking of maybe like men's soccer, they'd probably have that versus maybe having like their tennis teams.
Okay, so if we know that during COVID that BYU was in a spot where they were thinking like, oh man, maybe looking back, it would have behooved us. This is 10 times worse than COVID from a revenue standpoint, right?
Yes.
So now your athletic directors are all looking around going, okay, today we don't have to do this. In 3 years, they're looking the men's tennis coach in the eyes, looking the men's golf coach in the eyes and saying, why do we have you here? Because genuinely, the juice is not worth the squeeze. Again, I don't want to be the asshole, but I didn't do the settlement. I'm not. I wasn't the guy that put the house settlement through. It's by virtue of that where we sit.
So the one thing I know about. Go ahead, Christian. I'll let you go.
Now that we finally brought up like actual revenue sports like basketball, bringing in that international conversation again, is it important to have marketability year round for international? Because if you look at basketball, my school included, I know Derek's school included, they go after international players. Is that's something that you have to focus on, right? So
no. I would disagree.
Okay.
And here's why I would disagree, because internationally, no one's looking at Kansas State and going, man, can't wait to play basketball there. Dinkachov Molotov is not saying, wow, how fun would it be to go to Manhattan?
And it's going 5-star Dinkachov Molotov.
It's going to take the equivalent of a Bill Self to drag, or dollar signs. The reason they're coming to America is because we have a much more established college sports scene, and they could likely make more money through NIL here than they could in their early contracts overseas. So
it's all money. Some of the kids don't even visit. They don't even know where they're going.
Not marketability. They're not like,
but that's also a cultural
Lawrence,
thing,
Kansas reminds me of Venice.
But in Europe, they're getting paid sight unseen with an agent and picked up anyway too, because there's pro basketball guys as young as 15, right? So part of that's just a cultural like jump in sports, which is very different to us. A 15-year-old getting paid to play sports is not crazy in Spain or France or whatever, right? That's just is what they're doing.
It's just they could possibly make more here and not have to be as good.
No, that's why they're signing without coming to school, like to see anything. Is like they would sign with Barcelona without seeing anything too.
Yeah. Well, Parker, to your point, I can tell you. So Jaeger Deming came to BYU because of a connection he had with Travis Hansen, who played at BYU, played overseas in Moscow for years and years and years, played for Real Madrid. That connection was there. BYU also chased Hugo Gonzalez, who was in this year's NBA draft. Hugo wanted to come stateside, but the contract he had signed with Real Madrid prohibited that from happening. But to Derek's point, he would have come over for one reason and one reason only: dinero, money. That's why he was considering it and trying to break a contract that he couldn't get out of ultimately.
Okay, so where does the I guess split in this come to? Like, is everything about money? Because the idea that it is the NCAA, and if they want to stick with the student athlete thing and that sort of thing, then they are kind of behooving to, okay, well, we still need to stick with the college model.
Your split is 6 in my brain, and that number 6 is sports that will remain at your college if it was just revenue based.
Okay.
It'd be football, basketball, and then men's and women's basketball, and then is that 5? Football, basketball, and then we're looking at softball, baseball.
3, I think.
And so that's who ESPN's picked up, and that's who ESPN has interest in. Why does ESPN have interest in softball and in basketball, or softball and baseball, I should say? I'll tell you, nothing else is happening. That's the contract they have.
They like it for 3 weeks out of the year.
Yeah, and those sports cost the universities a ton of money. There's not anybody on here that is making any money in baseball.
So there's a ton of games in baseball. It's a lot of travel.
Correct. Yeah. And you past that, you're paying your coaches. You're paying some
you
players.
Got more scholarships. Yep.
So in that, like, it's those 6 have a shot to have longevity. Most schools are looking at 3 or 4.
Well, so
or those
Rich,
5, I guess.
what I know of Arizona State is they're planning on fully funding all 35 roster slots with baseball scholarship wise. Am I mistaken in saying that?
No, they are, and because they decided
doing
to
what?
make that decision,
They're doing what?
They're going to fully fund 35 scholarships for men's baseball at Arizona.
That cuts into their
increase
salary
it.
cap.
Have
It
fun.
is taking $2 million out of the salary cap. We are actually $18.5 million compared to the 20.5 that everybody else is at.
Yeah,
this is going from 11-7 to that. That's insane.
This is what Tennessee is doing and A&M has done, but they can now not pay out the $20.5 million to student athletes, but they can fully fund the baseball roster.
I mean, I guess Jello shots at Rocco's are a lot of fun, but I'd rather go to the college football playoff. That's just me.
Yeah, but can't they make up the difference with? I mean, if you had some wealthy NIL person that says, "I'm going to pay for a couple NIL deals for these guys,"
can't.
What
now that person can't pay you? It has to be through Polaris.
Richie,
But see,
what other
thing's going to get sued out of the building?
Richie,
that thing does not last a
scholarships
fall.
in?
What's that, Chris?
Richie, what other programs did they increase scholarships in? Because the way the Title IX aspect of this does work is that if they increase the baseball scholarships, they have to increase the female scholarships somewhere.
I honestly could not tell you.
Okay.
I do know that another thing with the football program is they're up to 105. So essentially, we don't have any more slots for walk-on kids.
Well, and that's
it's all scholarship now.
Yeah, so so they're going to go 105 scholarships. I'm expecting BYU at some point to go to that number. They're probably going to stick at 85 for the time being, but I think over the next 3 or 4 years, you'll see BYU increase. But the one thing I can speak from the BYU side of it is that they've gotten a half share in terms of their overall revenue share of speaking from the Big 12 media rights still the last 2 years. That's more money than BYU's ever seen as an athletic department. It's going to be more than a $12 million increase next year to their budget, and BYU already operates in the black. I'm telling you, if there's one school that I don't think is going to cut sports in the interim, it's going to be BYU, because they already are running it a pretty tight ship, and they're going to need to have even more money to throw at whatever they need to throw it at.
All right,
What's
Jake,
Nick
you're
think
right.
about Iowa State?
Who else here? Coming up, let's hit Iowa State here in a second. This is the Big 12 squad. All right, what was that?
New guy Nick.
New guy Nick.
Oh my gosh! No.
Let's ask Nick about his baseball program. Okay, Nick, back to you.
But to be fair, that was before any of this happened, right?
Yeah, back in like the 2000s. Yeah, no doubt.
And when
They were ahead of the
forgot who
curve.
brought up soccer. If you look at like just high school sports participation in the state of Texas, it is kind of criminal. There's only one Division I men's soccer program in the state of Texas too.
What is
It's
it? SMU?
Yeah, and it's crazy how many other schools come poach kids because there's just SMU in the state of Texas.
Huh.
That's a Title IX issue. Is the reason that is the case.
BYU's got a club champion. They've won multiple national championships in men's soccer at the club level. I know there are multiple BYU fans who want to see men's soccer added as a Division I sport, but to Chris's point, Title IX prohibits it, and they simply won't add to make it work. So that's the concern. And to your point, Drake, in the end, coming down the line, I can't even say that BYU down the line won't be looking at potentially cutting sports. I'm just saying in the interim, with as much money as they have coming in, they should be able to navigate this a little bit better early on. But I think eventually, when it comes down to dollars and cents, I could foresee a day in the next 3, 4, 5 years that BYU considers cutting at least 1 or 2 programs.
You say national championship? What is that?
In club.
What is that?
What is what? What is
Trophies,
club?
like silverware.
No. What is national championship? I don't have one of those.
Oh no. So in essence, here we come to a close where I wanted to start. Why? If the answer is money, and I just need money, why do I have even baseball? Why do I have tennis?
I mean,
I think you would get so much.
Disagree.
You would get so much PR blowback and I think political blowback. I just don't. You all can ask your leadership on your campuses.
I'll write my congressman.
I believe that there may have been like a kind of a conference-wide effort and conversations here to not cut sports in the Big 12 conference. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that that's what's happened, but I have some belief that there has been some sort of conversation agreement, like let's not go this route. So I'm not saying that everybody will operate that way, but I think everybody is trying not to have to go that route at this level.
Chris, remember tried to cut like 6 or 7 sports. This goes back 3 or 4 years ago, and they wanted to cut squash. Who participates in squash at the Division I level? Stanford, maybe some Ivy Leagues. I don't know. They tried to cut sports like that, and the blowback literally forced Stanford to go back and continue to sponsor. They have like 34 different sports.
They win the Sears Cup every year. They've got more sports than anybody in the country.
I understand that this stuff is like supposed to be business and money and stuff like that, but at the end of the day, it's just the short answer to your question, Drake, is it's the right thing to do. And we come on here and we blast when like the SEC or the Big Ten is trying to mess up the sport of college football, all for the bottom line, all for the dollar, because we're like, that's not the spirit of the game. That's what this comes down to. It's like, financially you're right, but the right thing to do is to not blow it.
And to Derek's point there too, like if you did that with every aspect of the university, don't you just start cutting majors in parts of the school that don't have donors in their alumni base? I mean, like how far do you carry that thought process in how you run your school?
On the sidewalk and meal plans are Uncrustables every day. You know what I mean? Like
how far do you go?
Where's the line? Where's the line?
And that's what I was going to add on with Parker too, is you're going to start to get to a point where you're going to be affecting your admissions rate, not just for sports, but like, you know, you're just going to start alienating people that are interested in different opportunities at different universities. And Arizona State doesn't have this program anymore, but U of A does have this program. So now I may be more inclined to go to U of A because not only do they offer this, but there's a school for this. And there's all sorts of different stuff that really starts to affect a lot more outside of football and basketball and women's basketball.
Richie, I can tell you the Utah State legislature cut more than $10 million out of the public school, speaking of public university funds this year. And each public university, BYU's private, obviously, but every other public university in the state of Utah had to cut at least, I believe, $1.5 million on the low end. And the University of Utah, for example, was in the tens of millions in terms of having to cut back their budgets. Majors are gone. Jobs are gone. Entire departments at Utah State, if I'm not mistaken, are gone at this point. To your point, eventually it's going to come to a point where it starts affecting admissions rates. And yes, somebody may look at it. I want to go to Utah State, but Utah offers this program, or Utah Tech offers that program, and they'll go there because of that program. That's the concern you're going to have down the line.
But to that point, we also have the state of I mentioned SMU and soccer earlier. There's only one veterinary school in the state of Texas, and it's like got the most horses and cattle per capita of any state in the country, right? And it's the same kind of thing where it's like, okay, there's also just one veterinary school because people said it wasn't worth their money, and now we have one option in the state of Texas.
And you know what? Guess when I learned that fact. This very moment, no one cares. You know, like again, I don't want to be the asshole of the group, but if we're talking about like,
but you wanted to grow up to wear your vest and go talk about baseball. Some people want to grow up and be a vet, right? That's the difference.
And I'm to that 1,000 Americans. Yes, I'm sure that they want to be less than that because it's 100 kids in Texas or whatever it may be. I don't know, but again, colleges are already cutting majors and also like the money, they just want it to make they want to make financial sense here. And I don't know, as much as I want to be happy-go-lucky, I know the second we just said, oh, the SEC, they're always like money, and that we want to be the upstanding citizens. The day that Greg Sankey says we as a conference have agreed unequivocally we will all cut men's, women's, golf, and tennis, the Big 12 will be a year behind them. This isn't a moral game. This is a game of the second that their football program gets an extra $5 million boost because they cut a couple things, the Big 12 will go, oh, shoot, and we can rent out our tennis facility for national tournaments?
We're not spending $5 million on those two things. Like, that's not $5 million to stop.
Oh, dog. Coaches' contracts. Player scholarships. Baylor alone is $50,000 per kid. I mean, what?
Is that cheap now?
Yeah, I mean,
$70,000 after fees, and that's 30 kids. Let's just do some math.
You guys pay tens of thousands of dollars to go to Baylor. BYU, it's like $6,000 a semester right now.
Okay, private school guy over here with his Baylor. Like, okay,
I feel like you have to have something going for you.
That must
to get
have been what got
BYU,
Rob
though.
right. Yeah.
Hey,
I think there's a prerequisite.
And post-requisites as well.
You don't have to be
during requisites.
There we go. Yes. You don't have to be a member to come to BYU, Richie. I'm just saying.
But
and
if you don't leave one, brother.
I hear your sentiment, but I think I just disagree. And I love Chris Level, like 13 chunky kids performing inappropriate activities on top of a cupcake, but I do think that having Ricky Fowler in solid orange competing for a U.S. Open is important. I think that Cade Cunningham playing in the All-Star Finals or the All-Star games is important for
the NBA is different.
Well, no,
it's different.
And Cody, it is important. I'm just saying it's not a reason why a program will stay or go. I don't think.
Yep, and that's what's
Does anybody know who Baylor's greatest athlete ever is?
Michael Johnson?
It's Michael Johnson. No one else was going to say that.
That's true.
Michael Johnson is the guy. He's maybe the greatest American sprinter of all time. No one knows he went to Baylor.
I was going to say RG3, but that's another.
Yeah,
Parker, you need to speak up for Carl Lewis, man. Come on.
Well, Carl Lewis is also our current track coach. He does it kind of for the love of the game, but Hakeem has an argument, I think, too.
Vinny Johnson, the microwave. Anyone?
Hey. Danny Ainge wants a word, everybody.
Ted Lyons, statistically probably the worst guy in the Baseball Hall of Fame, or the worst player. There are some pretty bad guys. The worst player in the Baseball Hall of Fame, Baylor
Good
Bear.
switch.
C-Jock Khrushchev.
Good correction.
C-Jock Khrushchev.
No one look up Bill Conlon.
But to me, that's more on the school for not selling it, though. Anyway, that's a separate show.
Sure, but yeah, it's not.
But would you rather sell RG3 or Michael Johnson? Come on.
Yeah.
Come on.
Why pick one? Why pick one?
Because
is it 1996 Atlanta, or is it
equal amount of? You can't give them the equal amount of exposure through marketing. You have to pick one. This was enlightening. Again,
Michael Johnson was on roids.
Bearer of that.
Kick him out. Kick level out of here. Patrick Mahomes should have been on some roids.
PED'd up, man. Yeah.
Like, come on.
This is
Ben Johnson should have won.
I don't want to hear this.
Always will be. Locked on. Dose. Thanks for making your first listen every single day. Dose Grande Squad.